What is up, guys? I am back from the Latin American International Championships, and I have probably been home for about 20 minutes after a long day of travel, but I wanted to get this video out there so you guys can get a full tournament report, because I have a bunch of really cool videos coming out this week. I'm going to be talking about how the tournament went for myself today, the deck list that I played up here, you guys can see it here, the 60 cards that me and my group ended up playing, that John Eng piloted to a top 4 finish, the decisions behind some of these, and later this week we're going to review the finals, because there were some pretty big mistakes from Tord's opponent that happened in one of the games, and I want you guys to understand why it's important to go back and watch those games to understand that Tord didn't just win, that his opponent also lost in those situations. And then we'll get you guys prepared for Toronto. So the first Silver Tempest tournament went down this past weekend in Latin America International Championships in Brazil, Sao Paulo, and the metagame was overwhelmingly Lugia. There was about 25% Lugia in day 1, and there was about 48% of day 2 was Lugia, which keep in mind, a lot of really good players brought Lugia. I think every single top player that was like by name, Tor Reklev, Henry Brand, John Eng, Isaiah Bradner, all these players brought Lugia. There was a couple of groups that didn't, like Azul Garcia Griego and Grant Manley, who brought this like Lost Box Kyogre deck, but they were the anomaly in the equation. So this is the 60 that I chose to play with my group, and we kind of refined it down to the grain. And the last minute tech that we chose to do is the gift energy, and I'll talk about everything here. So we kind of came down to the conclusion that 333 of these was perfectly fine. You could find them when you need them. And with 2 capture energies and all the ball counts, finding a Lugia on turn 1 was not very difficult. Radiant Charizard and Yveltal were both amazing attackers in their own rights because of both the Combustion Blast and Amazing Destruction. So it really did not feel like we needed to have anything beyond those two. But we were kind of fidgeting around with some lightning attackers. Metacham Zekrom was a combination that I had brought to the table about a week or so prior to the event, and we were testing it, but the efficiency of how often we could pull it off was far too low for our liking. The heavy energy cost and the bench requirement just made it really unviable for what we wanted to do, and that idea kind of got scrapped because we also assumed some of the lists would be playing Sharon's Care, and if they play Sharon's Care, it just doesn't do anything. Now, we still wanted to have a lightning attacker that punished our opponents, so we added this Raikou into the deck, the Amazing Rare Raikou. Now, Amazing Rare Raikou also serves a dual purpose against decks like Lost Box. If they, get rid of their Manaphy early, or even in Lugia Mirror when they don't match the Manaphy, and you can just start poking around doing whatever. It's just a really cool card. I think it's very strong. 1 copy of Lumineon and Crobat. The Crobat was there to extra dig. I think it was a very good card for, obviously, the situations you need it for, because sometimes you need a Hail Mary play, and that's where Crobat comes into the equation. A Pumpkaboo, because having 8 ball outs for the Pumpkaboo is really good, and a Manaphy. We opted not to play Dunsparce because we figured that you're never going to have both Manaphy and Dunsparce down on any given occasion, and if they have a Raikou or a Zekrom or whatever, I'm always almost certainly wanting to have a Manaphy in play, and the only, I guess, matchup where having both makes sense is Regigigas. And I didn't really expect too much Regigigas, but even with Manaphy, I think you can win the Regigigas matchup because it kind of plays like Palkia, where you just do the prize trade efficiently. Yes, they do have gift energy, so you can't stick them in any weird position with Marnies. We don't have a Roxanne access either, but you can kind of play like a back and forth dance with the Manaphy, given how the board state should go, and eventually you shouldn't have any 2 prizers in play, so they can't really Serena anything, so you can kind of play around that way as well. With your Archeops being an attacker, Lumineon can shuffle itself in with the Aqua Ring attack, etc., etc. We opted to go up on supporter count because we felt like the 3 research and 2 Marnie, or 3 Marnie and 2 research, was the problem. We're missing that supporter on that important turn. So we went to 3 research, 3 Marnie, 3 Serena, and 1 boss. Post event, I'd probably make this a 2-2 split, just because there were some situations where I felt like I would want a second boss, because turns after my opponent would Aqua Ring, I would want to have the boss to punish when they have no energy on board and just 2 Archeops and I don't know, something useless on their board, and I just want to bring up an Archeops, pop it that turn, and all of a sudden their setup would be completely crippled because now they're left with 1 Archeops and a completely naked board. Was my thought process. 4-4-4 on the ball counts. I think you cannot skimp on those. It's so important. 2 copies of Lost Vacuum. We were expecting a lot of Path decks, and I think Lost Vacuum is very, very strong. And Parasol, we were expecting a lot of Parasol. I don't really know how much use the other guys got out of the second Vacuum, but I got 0 use out of the second Vacuum. So if there was a cut immediately to happen for me, that 60th card would come from the Vacuum slot. I think that I used that card little to zero throughout my tournament, but I'll explain what my matchups were, and you guys can kind of judge for yourself whether it was needed or not. But I don't know how much the other boys did use it, so I can't speak for everybody on that one. We did play 3 copies of Choice Belt, which was the MVP, because in every single situation, whether it be Mir, whether it be Mew, whether it be Tina, whether it be Palkia, or Kyurem or whatever, you need a Choice Belt on a very certain specific turn, and missing that Choice Belt can usually spell the end of the game for you, so why not make that 2 count into a 3 count? And that's something that our list had that many other lists did not have. 1 copy of Collapse, because obviously you still want a counter stadium, and it was good to kind of wipe the board of some of the worst attackers in your deck. We have the 4 Powerful, 4 Aurora, 2 Capture and 2 Turbo. I went up to 4 Capture at one point to try it out, but I felt like it was overkill, and I wanted to have special energies to help out. We had a Heat Energy, which kind of serves the dual purpose of working for Charizard and Yveltal, which we wanted to have that energy for that purpose. I was not a fan of the Heat. I think Heat was on the lowest on my radar, but I was convinced after it served the dual purpose for Zard and Yveltal, so it's kind of hard to not play that. We played a Speed Energy as well, because Raikou does have the most heavy energy cost requirement other than Yveltal, so if we want to use both Raikou and Yveltal, we need to have another energy to kind of fulfill that requirement in a game, was the idea. And we had a V-Guard, which is absolutely necessary, and the gift was a last minute addition because we figured that we would be playing a lot more Mew than we did, and so the gift would be kind of a way to replenish our hand post or Path Roxanne, Path Marnie, whatever, you know, that the Mew deck would do before knocking us out. Gift energy did not really come in clutch for me at all. I didn't use it at all, but the other boys might have. I don't know yet. So here's how my tournament went. I started the day up against Demetrius Eaton, who is one of the top players in Europe right now. Demi is like number 2 or number 3. Actually, after this weekend, probably like number 4 or 5. But still, Demi is a top player. Game 1 starts with me winning the flip, which is really good for the Lugia Mirror. And I start off, get a huge, good swing turn. Everything is going my way. And then an untimely Marnie sticks me, and I can't find my way out of it. And Demi wins the game. Game 2, I end up sweeping Demi. I'm losing, actually, to Demi at some point. And there was a turn where Demi throws up a Charizard, thinking that he can do a ton of damage to me. But he miscounts where the prize count is, and I win because he kind of just gave me a free turn and passed it back to me. And then game 3, I open Luminian Pass, and I lose the game going second. So it is what it is. Round 2, I have to go against Nicholas Manzo. He's playing Lost Box. The first game, Nicholas opened, I think, Cramorant or Manaphy or something, and did not really have a good Lost Box start. And I was able to kind of just sweep the first game without showing my Raikou at all. So in the second game, when I dropped the Raikou and the Speed Energy to take 2 prizes on Comfies after they had already lost away their Manaphy on one of the Comfy searches, it was a little bit of like a, oh man, I could have seen this coming kind of thing. But I was able to take this series pretty quickly 2-0. And then up against Thiago Nascimento Silva. This was actually a no-show for me. This player did not actually show up to the round. I don't know what the situation was. I hope they're okay. Hope everything is okay. But it was very weird to get a no-show round at 1-1, so I go to 2-1. Very fortunate. Now round 4, I go up against Joao Antonio Cavalcanti, and they showed up, and we're playing game 1, and it's Lost Box, but it's like amazing Lost Box with Zacian, Raikou, like all these attackers, and Joao, game 1 is full swing. I think it's pretty even on board, and then a judge comes over and says, can I count your deck real quick? And my opponent's like, yeah, sure. And so he counts my opponent's deck, and turns out there's a 59 card deck because they dropped the card at a previous match. Really unfortunate for them. So they end up getting a round 1 loss, or game 1 loss, and then we go into game 2. And game 2, my opponent is setting up pretty perfectly, but I start prize mapping out as well as I can, get the Manaphy down, knowing that he has a Raikou from game 1. I still get knockout, I think, turn 2 from his Raikou in the Choice Belt, but then I start spamming Marnies post that after that situation to kind of prevent that it happens again to me. Every time I take a big prize, I go Marnie, because I know that that's kind of how the path needs to go for me to even stand a chance in the game, and it works out perfectly, where Joao ends up having 2 prizes left to take when I take my last prize. And I did have a Lugia on board, so if he gets a boss plus the Raikou, Mirage Gate, everything, he would have gotten the knockout, but I did count that there were 3 Mirage Gates gone, and a couple of energies that were really crucial in the discard, despite a recycler. So now I'm moving on to 3-1. Then I go up against Gustavo Suarez in round 5. And now Gustavo's playing something very similar to what Sander ended up playing, some sort of control deck. Game 1, Gustavo just gets rid of all my energy very quickly, and I can't do anything. And then so I scoop it up pretty quickly, because I had Gustavo left himself actually with exactly 2 Evitals in play and nothing else. And so turn 2, when I get to use my VSTAR, I go I go through my deck and I'm like, if Raiku's in here, I win right now because I can just snipe both. And Raikou happened to be prized, and I was like, no. And then I gave it a turn. I did the knockout. I gave it a turn. Gustavo got rid of my energies. I chilled for a second. I was like, he benched a Mill Tank, and I was like, what can I do here? And there was really no line for me because of just the way the deck had panned out. My hand was panning out, and so I just scooped. Game 2 was a lot more damning because like I tried to Marnie Gustavo and I took a knockout, and Gustavo went ahead and promoted the Evital and then Piers for the energy, and I was like, oh no, that's not good for me. So I got quickly 2-0'd by this control deck. I guess I could have sat there until time got called, but I'm losing that set every single time. The idea is to Aqua Ring in that matchup to keep your energies as well, but I was never able to establish a board that could do that with poor openers or whatever. Round 6 I went up against Kawan, and then they were playing Lost Box as well, which is, I'm saying, a lot of Lost Box, no Stout. I didn't play Stoutland. I think it's completely winnable. Both games were pretty easy, I think. I just managed to do the prize tempo trade properly in every single situation, and the Marnies, I just needed the Marnie every single time to stick for one turn, and it did exactly what it was supposed to. They placed their damage counters on something. I forgot that I was able to collapse away in one of the games. I think it might have been Crobat, which kind of negated a full turn for them. But it was like super nice, and the matchup was super good. And then at 4-2, I go up against Mateus Rocha, and they're playing Lugia Mir. So game 1 they go first, they completely dominate me. Game 2, I completely dominate them, and then game 3, I'm like counting my lucky stars because they have a really poor start, and I'm like, yes, like we have a chance, like we can do this. Like my start's super insane. I have a Read the Wind, 2 Lugias established. 2 Archeops in discard, like everything is perfect, and then Mateus goes Marnie and gets their V-Star up, and knocks out a Lugia, and my hand is like 4 unplayable cards, and I top deck a boss, and I'm just like, no, and I lost. But I thought that the situation was completely playable. They had played completely into a Raikou play as well. Like I was over the moon at how the board state had set up, but the Marnie had got me. So at 4-3, I was now eliminated from the tournament, but I needed to win my next round to earn championship points to keep my dreams of top 16 and stuff alive. So next round, I go up against Gabriel, who's playing Tina. And now Tina is a very favorable matchup for this deck because you can always bring up a Tina before they can even get into the Tina. And even if they star Requiem, one of your Lugias, you can always come up with a Zard and take a free knockout as well. And both games, Gabriel never really got a star Requiem off. The first game was just really back and forth where we were both at 5 prizes, and then Gabriel had the Star Requiem if they could find their boss or a Serena, and they missed. A way to bring up my Lugia, and then obviously I just Serena'd and brought up their Tina and took it out before it could even Star Requiem, and at that point the game was effectively over, because no matter how the lines went, I could always just take my prizes before Gabriel could. And then in game 2, Gabriel ended up bricking, giving me the win. And at 5-3, I ended up IDing with Leonardo to give ourselves both a 80 championship points, and I finished 215th at the Latin American International Championships. Now, if I was moving towards Toronto, the changes I would make is probably cut the Serena for a boss and cut the Vacuum for, I think, Duns. Probably a Ranger. I'd probably make it a Ranger just because like the Marnie in the mirror is the reason I lost, and I felt like this list is very good for mirror. Like even if it's like 55-45 in other mirrors, that 5% actually makes a huge difference. So I would just put a Ranger in the deck. That's all I would do really. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this kind of content. If you enjoy the content, obviously like and subscribe. Thank you for supporting me on my journey. This puts me at 160 championship points, a lot lower than where I'd want to be to start the season. But these last couple months have been a little bit of non-Pokemon related life stuff, so I will be picking it back up and going full swing for the next couple months. I have 4 regionals coming up in the next 2 months, which is crazy for me because we've had a little bit of a break until now, and I'm excited. So see you guys on the road.